So, I want to go back to our study of Master Harold and the Boys, and I want to begin on about page 23. One thing that's sort of a motif in this play is the idea that Hallie doesn't really value education very much. He does sort of think of himself as this sort of intellectual, but we can see through that. He's more of a pseudo intellectual who doesn't read or work very hard at school, and his ideas are sort of tainted by the culture that he lives in. Sam, on the other hand, really does value education. And the fact that they have these different values highlights the immorality of the society that they live in. Sam, of course, would never be given an opportunity to have a real education. The bulk of Sam's education, or at least, comes from Hallie's books that he brings home from school. It also lets us see that Sam is a bit of a father figure for Hallie. He inspires him to study and do better in school. And Hallie doesn't really even see that. He sees Sam as sort of this equal who just sort of has this interesting, but we get it. We see through it. We know that what Sam is doing is he's trying to um, teach Hallie to value education or to do better or at least inspire him to do better in school. I think he sort of fails, but that's not Sam's fault. Sam really is interested in these books and in learning these just sort of basic facts, and he does sort of care. On page on page 24, I noticed that Sam has learned all the rivers in Africa, and Hallie says, "You know, you've got a phenomenal memory." And Sam says, "You should be grateful. That's why you started passing your exams. You tried to be better than me." And they laugh about this together. They also share this memory about Hallie hiding. He's hiding from his mother, um, and he used to go into Sam and Willie's rooms when he hid. Um, that's part of the beginning of their relationship. Um, Hallie has emotional and psychological distance from his parents. And so from his early childhood, he runs to Sam and Willie, and they care for him and they take care of him and they hide him. Um, One of the things that happens, though, is, even though he's hiding in their room, these black men during apartheid, of course, they're not going to lie to the mother and say, oh, no, he's not here. He was always betrayed. Um, On page 25, in the middle of that long speech, he says, "It's no joking," this is Hallie speaking, "no joking. If it wasn't for your room, I would have been the first certified 10-year-old in medical history. In other words, I would have gone crazy if it hadn't been for you guys." Hallie sees that. He appreciates these men for that. Um, as the story progresses, we get this story about him walking in on Sam and um, someone named Cynthia, who obviously they're having sex, and they laugh about that too. In the middle of page 26, there's a line in this play that has always mystified me. Hallie says, "No, no, thank you. I'm not interested in girls." I'm not sure what that means, or I'm not sure what to make of that line. I think he's probably not as popular as he wants to be. But I don't know really what the implications are from that line about Hallie's sexuality. Personally, I don't think it means that he's gay. What I think it really means is he just sort of distances himself from other people. Like, this is a kid who's filled with anger and rage. And if he's not interested in girls, it's because he's a misanthrope, not because he's a gay man or boy. The other thing that it mentions is, and these symbols I think are really important, people like Joe Louis, whose nickname is the Brown Bomber. Joe Louis was the heavyweight champion of the world. He's a boxer, of course. He was also really one of the most famous people in the world in 1950. Um, Not only was he the heavyweight champion of the world, but I mean, he was just impressive. One of his competitors was a German named Max Schmeling. Um, the truth is, in 1950, when you have two fighters like this, one very white and one very black, um, it's sort of like it sort of like illustrated the racism of the time and how black people liked their black fighter and white people liked their white Aryan fighter, and that's just sort of how it just sort of brings that out. There are some other names that are there too, like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Um, they're, of course, the great dancers of the actually like 30s and 40s. They made a lot of dancing movies. It mentions Rita Hayworth too, who was, in 1950, people would have thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world. But we get other little hints and clues in this play too. One part of what we get is some imagery about Willie and and Sam's room, and it sounds to me like they have a little box for their things, but it sounds to me almost like a jail cell. It's not. They live with this family, but they live oppressed lives. There's just no doubt about it. Um, the they talk about their lives together and Hallie growing up with them, just like a family would. And you get to see that the relationship between these two men and Hallie really is familial. Um, and they talk about playing checkers together and things like that. Um, but for me, one of the things that really sort of does come out is the relationship between Sam and Hallie really is sort of like a father figure, especially in the life of a kid who doesn't really have a very good one. And also these people who are willing to be Hallie's friend, because this is a kid who is not particularly likable. And so they spend time with him. They're kind to him. Um, they show him some dignity and respect. They make him feel smart, even though he's probably not as smart as he thinks he is. One of the things that they do, or Sam does, is he makes a kite for Hallie. And as he's doing that, um, Hallie starts getting really excited. But you can see a lot here. One, you can see that Sam is doing something for somebody else that he doesn't really have to do, but he's doing this just out of care and compassion for Hallie. One of the great ironies of this play is that Sam really does probably feel sorry for Hallie. Um, the kite really is. This is a play with very few symbols, but every symbol is sort of like obvious and developed and clear. The bench for whites only, that's a very clear symbol in this play. The kite also. And think about what kites are. They're these things that fly, that have sort of freedom. But for this play, it's really important that you see that Hallie seems like a kid with very little joy in his life, and that kite really does bring him joy. Um, the But you also get to see Hallie's character flaws. He makes Sam carry the kite because it's made out of household stuff, and it even mentions his mother's stockings because there's probably a stocking hanging as a tail for the kite. That's how we used to make kites a long time ago, and it is what it is, but it's just kind of a trashy looking kite, but Hallie's character flaw is that he's too proud, that he's too arrogant, that he's too. And this shows even when he's leaving to go fly this kite with Willie, he's going to make Willie carry it. He doesn't even want to do the thing where you run with the kite and let go of it because He's so afraid that someone will see him fail. Um, that defines his character. But when the kite does go up in the air, it's described like this. He says, I started to run. I don't know how to describe it, Sam. Yeah, the miracle happened. I was running and waiting for it to crash to the ground, but instead, suddenly there was something alive behind me at the end of the string, tugging as if it wanted to be free. I looked back. I still can't believe my eyes. It was flying, looping around, and trying to climb even higher into the sky. Kites symbolize a kind of freedom, and that's a little bit of irony in this play. I mean, it's so obvious, I don't think we need to talk about it. But Hallie says, and we had, and I was so proud of us. I'm on page 30, by the way. Um, he feels this moment of elation and joy. Now, the bit about the kite is going to come back at the end of the play because Hallie's going to make mistakes and he's going to wish that he could take it all back and go back in time. I don't know if he can or not. The ending of the play is I'm still not sure if this play ends with any hope whatsoever. The question really is do the events at the end of the play cause Hallie to change? I'm not so sure that they do. But other people see this play wrong. They see this as sort of an autobiography of Atul Fugard, and they assume that sorry, we're having cat difficulties here. Um, hold on. I mean, people sort of know that Atul Fugard turned out to be a decent human being eventually, um, but he was raised like this, and so this might be sort of like a depiction of him at his worst, and then of course you grow and change from those things. Um, the image, it's on page 31, is of Hallie, and Hallie describes himself as a little white boy in short trousers and a black man old enough to be his father flying a kite. It's not every day that you see that. But Sam, teaching a higher lesson than Hallie's able to see, says, but why strange? Because one is white and the other black? And Hallie says, I don't know. Would have been strange, just as strange, I suppose, if it had been me and my dad, a cripple man and a little boy. Nope, there's no chance of me flying a kite without it being strange. And then the stage direction just says, simple statement of fact, no self pity. He just says it. It's weird for me to be flying a kite. Cat. Um, the Hallie says this, yes, something unexpected. The way it ended with us was too straightforward. Me on the bench and you going back to work. There's no drama in that. On page 32, I don't think Hallie, even at age 17, understands why Sam left him alone there with the kite. The truth is, Sam cannot sit on that bench. It's a whites only bench. And he does probably have to go back to work, so he leaves him there. But Hallie, even at 17, doesn't realize that this is that his life is so connected to apartheid and the rules that govern it. The bench, like the kite, is one of the most obvious symbols in the play, and you should know it. He sort of, Atul Fugard, he does this thing where he introduces a symbol and then he brings it back at the end of the play and he elevates the significance of it. It's a very simple, straightforward thing. Lots and lots and lots of authors do this. From page 32 to 33, Hallie gives a dramatic monologue. Now, um, it's a device throughout this play that they use the telephone, and to get it, you have to imagine what a phone looks like in 1950. But it's not usually. I think it's always Hallie talking to his mother on the phone. So much of his character, it reminds me a little bit of Shakespeare's soliloquies because so much of his character and his inner thoughts and his inner feelings come out in those conversations. One thing you should notice is how he talks to his mother. He feels like it's okay to scold her, But another thing that he does is he guilts her, he says things like, "Well, don't blame me if this happens, I'll probably fail all my classes," because the truth is he's probably gonna fail all of his classes anyway. Um, but it's also clear that, um, uh, there's this moment where he's screaming at his mother, and he's saying things like, well, hold on a second. Yeah, he's telling his mother just to lie to his father, and he's saying, "Say Dr. Connolly wants more X-rays of his stump, or bribe him, or we'll sneak double tots of brandy in the future. What? Order him to get into bed at once. If he's going to behave like a child, treat him like one." "All right, Mom. I was just trying to. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." You know, the mother is in a no-win situation. Her husband is really sick, and she's going to bring him home from the hospital, but their son doesn't want to see his father. Um, and this whole situation must really be torment for Hallie. Hallie's 17. He's an adult now. What could he do to support his mother? What could he do to make this situation better? None of that even comes into his head. He wants his dad away from them, and and he doesn't really want to accept any responsibility for what is about to happen. His father's going to come home. His father's going to be awfully sick. But the way Hallie treats his parents and the way he reacts to all of this is, I'm going to use the word cowardly. There's there's a line on page 34 that I think is really indicative of Hallie. Hallie's really coming to grips with the fact that his father's coming home, and he's furious about it. And he says at the bottom of page 34, "Life is just a plain bloody mess. That's all. And people are fools." You have to get the irony of Hallie complaining to Sam and Willie about how unfair life is. It it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous that how dare he really? How dare he complain to, Sam and Willie, who are victims of real social injustice, about how unfair the world is. But that's what he is. He's spoiled, and he's so self-centered that he can't see beyond that scope. Um, Sam tries to cheer him up, "Come on, Haley. Yes, they are. The bloody well deserve what they get." And he says, "People deserve what they get. That's because they're so stupid." Sam intelligently says, pointing out the irony, says, "Well, then don't complain." Hallie, being a jerk, says to Sam, "Don't try to be clever, Sam. It doesn't suit you." In other words, you, Sam, you're not smart enough to be clever. So don't say stuff like that. Anybody who thinks there's nothing wrong with this world needs to have his head examined. Just when things are going along all right, without fail, someone or something will come along and spoil everything. Somebody should write that down as a fundamental law of the universe, the principle of perpetual disappointment. If there is a God who created this world, he should scrap it and try it again. And Sam's like, "All right, Haley, all right. What you got for homework?" He's doing what my um, wife's sister does with her little kids. When her kids get really upset, they just sort of like, the adult in the room just sort of like changes the subject and starts them talking about something else. He's not treating Hallie like a little kid. He's making him feel better he's being a parent. He's doing what parents always do. What's Hallie's impression of school? What's your homework? It's bullshit as usual. Write 500 words describing an annual event of culture or historical significance. Later, Hallie's going to decide to write about this ball, this dance that Willie and Sam are preparing for. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is one of the reasons he's doing it is because he knows that this is an event for Black people, and he knows that his teacher won't like that he's writing about what he calls the natives. I'm going to stop about here, and then I'm going to try to explain to you what I think you should be doing for your homework. I especially like pages 38 through like 40. Um, on these pages, Sam and Willie are trying to tell or teach uh, Hallie about ballroom dancing. Ballroom dancing is high art. Make no mistake about it. There's nothing sort of like cheesy or anything else about it. It's complex. It's as high of art as any other form of dance, and it is also, um, there's something so profoundly beautiful about it that it's worthy of real attention. Hallie has to get over the fact that he sort of views this as like, you know, this thing that these lesser people do. When really, in fact, it's probably a cultural event of real beauty and significance. But he does get excited about it, and the story of what's actually going to happen is kind of an amazing story. So, what these pages do is, but you know, it's very clear to me that Sam is trying to teach Holly something about this experience. And essentially, it feels to me like Hallie is starting to get it. He is actually trying to learn something. But one of your questions is about how do these two men really view this differently? I'm going to let you think about that. So for IBHL, today's Thursday. Where you should be is you finished these first four questions. Um, and your homework for Thursday, or the homework that I'm giving you on Thursday, is to do the next four questions. Um, the just as a little bit of guidance, I'm assuming that each fragment of this video that you're making, or each question that you're answering, is taking about 1.5 to 2 minutes. It's really important in your answers that you're connecting it to something specific in the play. And I do want you to remember that this is a 70-point assignment. So this is the part that's next. And remember, you need to be able to connect all of these things. We're going to meet next on, we're going to meet next on Monday. And on Monday, I'm going to talk about the end of the play, or at least I'm going to post a video about my thoughts on the end of the play. And then I'm going to assign the last questions on here and put a date for the video to be uploaded, which will probably be by Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning. Um, and and then I'll get to them. I only have one more paper to grade as far as your mocks are concerned for the HL kids. And I've actually posted a lot of the grades, but I'm thinking you can't see your semester exam grades yet.